I'd be willing to bet that of all the people that are tuning in tonight, most of them have something, whether it's a UAP sighting or they have had some kind of ghost experience or something out in the woods that they can't explain, some sort of unexplained phenomena that they have experienced. What's the wildest story that has been shared with you now that you are studying this?
Trying to think if I can talk about this or not.
I mean, this is a safe,
Well,
private
okay.
space.
I will say this without naming names. So I met with a very well-known person in this field. Had dinner with him, and was told about congressional testimony that was given privately to a few senior people in Congress that was touching on the issue of whether there are non-human intelligences living among us. And that's about as far as I will go, but it was my response was, that sounds like bullshit, and his response was, I'm being honest with you, that's exactly what Congress was told. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So
I mean, there are people that I have
can't
questioned.
say more than that.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic drew their plans against us.
All of a sudden, a stick out of nowhere landed right in front of us, and there was no tree, nothing overhead. Something threw it at us.
Yeah. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the Alaska.
We do.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor was revealed to be the chief scientist of the UAP task force with the Pentagon.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, will save for closed session.
Hello. Welcome to All Things Unexplained. I am CJ Derringer here with my co-host, Dr. Tim Mounts. Tim, welcome back from New Mexico.
From New Mexico. As a matter of fact, talk about synchronicity. That's why we had to reschedule tonight. That's why we're here tonight, because I got called away to moderate a UFO debate. Great aspirations, right? Oh, and I also may or may not have visited the UFO crash site that Diana Pasulka and Gary Nolan and Tyler and many others have explored. And I explored it too, and I made some interesting finds, but that's for another show.
That's for another show. Were you in Roswell? Is that where the debate was?
No, that debate was in a great town that I got to explore, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, or as I was informed, T or C. They don't like to say Truth or Consequences. T
Hold
or
on.
C.
That was the name of the town?
Yeah, Truth or Consequences. And do you know how they got that name?
I did not realize that. I thought that was just the name of the debate.
No, the debate was actually Roswell versus Washington, and it was just perfect that it was in a town called Truth or Consequences. And we told the debaters, if you don't tell the truth, there will be consequences. So it was it was perfect.
They've never heard that one before.
No, probably not. Well, get this. So Truth Consequences, for those who don't know, used to be called Hot Springs, New Mexico, which I think is a fine name because they actually have these amazing natural hot springs. I walked to one of them and used it on the morning of the debate. But then there was a television show. I think it was in the 60s or 70s, a game show. And they had this contest. And the town was like, yeah, we'll get in the contest, and to win, we'll change the name of our town to Truth or Consequences. That was the name of the game show, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
But I kind of like, yeah. Oh, and speaking of TRC, Pam Love is here with us. Pam, did I meet you? I bet I did. Pam Love is here from, see, I told you, TRC.
This is amazing.
That's
I feel
what we got to wonder.
Springs is a little easier to say, but Truth or Consequences, bring it on. Okay, I'm glad. I've been enlightened. Thank you for sharing.
That's what we're going to have to wonder about tonight. Will there be truth or will there be consequences?
I'm going to guess just truth. Oh, Pam, you must have said it like that because that is his Mississippi accent right there. His name is not Tim, it's Tim.
I remember Pam because she was surprised her name had 3 syllables in it. And she guessed I was from Tennessee, but I said, nope, New York City, hon. I'm sorry, New York City. Yeah, no, they didn't buy that for long. And not from Tennessee. Pam remembers where I'm from, I bet. And I even told her how somebody is really from the Magnolia State or not. And that's if they don't include that second set of S's. So it's Mississippi, right? Not Mississippi. A Mississippi. I would never say Mississippi.
Yeah. I spent too long in elementary school learning to spell it to say anything short of Mississippi.
See, Pam knows. Matter of fact, we got people from all over the world joining us right now because speaking of Tennessee, we got somebody from the great state of Tennessee here with us tonight for this show. Marie L. is here from Australia. Hi, Marie. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you everybody for joining us. We're excited to have you. We have a great show. We have Dr. Stephen Bruehl joining us. He is an anesthesiologist or professor of anesthesiology by day, and he is studying UAP at night or probably on the weekends. And he recently had a paper go, I would call it UAP viral. On Monday, just Monday, he released a paper. So we're so excited to have him here to chat with us. If you have questions for him, please do include them here. We will try to get to all of them. We do have super chats available. Anybody that does a super chat, we will make sure to get that question into our show. Yes, we can be bought. And we're not ashamed of it.
And I believe there's no lower limit. This is a statistics problem. There's no lower limit on the super chats, I don't think. By the way, you're right, CJ. Super chats guaranteed to get your question or comment in, and we thank you. All of that goes to the podcast and to support our work. Otherwise, we'll try the best we can. But I got a surprise, CJ. You want to see it?
I do. Yes. Look
what we got in the mail.
Oh, this is exciting.
We, I don't know, was sent this from YouTube, and I'm going to open it up here and unveil what's inside here. Look, let's see, a little postcard from YouTube, and I'm going to unveil what's in here. And how far have we come, CJ, from that very first episode to YouTube now? Get out of here. Sending us things
Does
like
it work?
This.
Cut.
It
Time
works.
to cut,
It's
Tim.
literally...
Wrap it up.
Thank you, YouTube. We really appreciate you. And we're proud to unveil it tonight for a huge show with Dr. Stephen Bruehl.
Yes. And let's not keep him waiting any longer. He's waiting in the wings to join us. So we'll be back with
let's
him.
Let's cut to commercial. Is that what we're going to do?
That's what yes, cut to commercial, please.
Cut to commercial. Here we go.
All Things Unexplained is free to watch on YouTube and listen to wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to support our show, you can visit our YouTube store. Additionally, you can find us on Venmo under All Things Unexplained. Be sure to check out our website, allthingsunexplained.com. All proceeds from the sales of Dr. Mounce's books on Amazon and Audible also go straight to our show.
Want to be a real part of the show? One of the best ways you can support us is by visiting our official store. All you have to do is head over to unexplainedswag.com. There you can pick up podcast t-shirts, podcast hoodies, coffee mugs, and lots more, including our best-selling UFO t-shirt and UAP t-shirt. just head over to unexplainedswag.com. You can also get to the store from our main website, allthingsunexplained.com, and from wherever you're listening or watching to us at.
Hello, Steve. Welcome.
Thank you, CJ. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Steve. Good to have you
waiting
tonight.
in the wings there for a bit, but it was worth the wait. You have had a big week. You have had a near epic week in the UAP world, having released your paper on Monday, which we just found out was also, you said, International Disclosure Day. Is that what we discussed?
That's what Beatriz told me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just an accident.
Well, what a happy accident that is. Well, tell us a little bit about your findings in this recent study that you published.
Sure. So it's a study. It was just published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal called Scientific Reports, which is a serious, widely read general science journal. And I did it with my collaborator, who's Beatriz Villarroel, who's with the Nordic Institute of Theoretical Physics in Stockholm. And this is not my thing. She came up with this idea, but she, early in her career, realized that all these observatories had old photographic plates that had been taken back prior to there being any satellites in the sky, from about 1949 to 1957, and that in many cases there were a series of images taken sometimes over pretty short periods, so you could look at changes over time. And she got into looking at these and discovered something that she called transients. And basically what it is you look at a photograph and you've got an image that shows all the stars you expect to see. And 30 minutes later, you take another image and there seems to be an extra star or several extra stars, and it just points. It looks exactly like stars. And then weeks, months, years later, you take multiple images again, and those extra things are gone. So it's literally a single photographic plate that these things that look exactly like extra stars appear and then they disappear. And she noticed, just coincidentally, that two instances where multiple very bright transients appeared fell on the same dates as the well-known Washington, D.C. UFO sightings back in 1952. And this is an example of one of the images of that first weekend. And if you look on the right, that's what the sky normally looks like. And on the left, those three extra stars in the center, those are the transients. So these were very bright and they were clustered together. And given that it happened on that DC weekend, she began wondering, gee, I wonder if maybe what we captured here was the UAP in space. And I heard her speak about this, and I didn't know her at all, and I didn't know how famous she was, but I wrote her an email and said, hey, that's pretty interesting. I wonder if what would happen if we looked systematically at your transients and how they were associated with UAP sightings more broadly. And we did a Zoom, and she's very collaborative and said, sure, we should do that. So we started working on it together from a distance because she's in Stockholm. And in the process of putting together the data set that had the transient data and UAP data from it's called UFO-CAT, from the Center for UFO Studies. It's got several 100,000 UAP sightings. I remembered a book I'd read called UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings, where there were many, and it's a great book, many anecdotal reports of people who were working on nuclear tests that said they saw UAP either right before, during, or right after nuclear tests. So I decided to pull in the dates of all of those above ground nuclear tests that we did, the Soviets did, and the British did between 1949 and 57. And so we had basically three things. We had, did a transient occur? And if so, how many were there on that day? And then what were there UAP sightings that day? And if so, how many? And was there a nuclear test that day? And we had about 2,700 days in our data set with all this information. And we were going to wait originally to have AI applied to it to try to clean up the transient data, because we know that there are some erroneous identifications that this computerized system that detected them made. But I got tired of waiting for the AI, and one weekend I pulled out my statistics program and looked at this just to see if there was any hint of a relationship. And honestly, I was shocked, because what we found was that on what we call a nuclear window, which is plus or minus 1 day around a nuclear test, there was a 45% increase in the chances of seeing a transient, which is quite a bit. And it was highly significant statistically. There was 8 chances out of 1,000 that that was an error. And that's the main focus of the paper. And the other finding related to that was more interesting is after we sent it into the journal to be reviewed by other scientists, one of them came back and said, you need to look in more detail at the exact timing of this. Don't just look at a window. And I started looking 2 days before a test, 1 day before a nuclear test, same day, 1 day after, and 2 days after. And it was really amazing, because it turned out that most of the effect came because there was a transient more likely to appear the day after a nuclear test. And it was actually a 68% increase in likelihood of seeing a transient, which is a big number.
Wow.
And it's really it's the difference between on days without nuclear tests, there was about 11% of days there was at least one transient. But if there'd been a nuclear test, there was almost 19% of the days had a transient. So it was a really big increase. And that's what the paper's about. And, it has a lot of interesting implications.
It sure does. Now, these transients that are photographed, are they all pictures taken from the same observatory?
Yes, they're all from the Palomar Observatory in California. And there are actually, I was going to just say, there are other observatories around the world that have data like this, but we haven't been able to access it yet. But we could try to replicate it with those other data.
I feel like it's significant that they all came from that one as well. I mean, think about all of the other data out there from different locations, from various different satellites. The plates that you're speaking of, how do you look at these now? So they were taken in 1952. Is it something that you truly just hold up and look at, or is there a machine that you put them in to view them?
Well, fortunately, there was an effort made to digitize all these. So all of the plates they had available were digitized and put on a publicly accessible website that anyone can access. And I'm not an astronomer by any stretch, but Beatriz showed me how you do this. And you literally pull down an image from one time, let's say in November of 56, and you pick another image that will be there always. It's 30 minutes later, you have a second image, and then there's something called a blink comparator, which basically is like opening, moving from side to side as if you're kind of blinking back and forth. And what your brain will quickly pick up is if there are any differences in the images, they'll immediately stand out. And you can see these transients when you do that.
Yes. Gosh, thank goodness for digitizing things, right? One of my first jobs was as a sports writer at a newspaper, and this was before everything was digitized, and I won't give away my age here, but I had to go back into the files and look in these tiny little files with the, magnifying glass and go through, look for, stories from years ago, what have you. It was such a pain. Now you could just type it in. So that's great. So let's talk a little bit about the nuclear part of this. We've had lots of people come on our show that have talked to us about seeing things around nuclear testing sites, including Bob Salas, who was at the Maelstrom Air Force Base and had a very significant sighting. And we've had people come on from the show Ancient Aliens to talk about similar things, sightings around the world, right? So we've certainly talked about this before. You're now applying statistical analysis to what people are seeing. Why do you think your particular paper is generating so much buzz right now?
Yeah, it's because, this is just my opinion, but I think it's because everybody knows these stories, but the skeptics always complain that, yeah, that's just one person's story. You can't really make too much of that. You don't have any scientific proof of that. And what we've been able to do, fortunately, is use standard statistics and a standard scientific approach to looking at these associations, and have found that there is a quite statistically significant association that is very intriguing. And I think a few comments that I've seen, it was basically like, thank God somebody's finally doing real science with UAPs. And I haven't systematically counted it, but I think it's around 6 or 7 papers ever published previously in mainstream science journals on the UAP topic. It's very rare, and I like to joke with people that every study somebody publishes now on this topic, you're increasing knowledge in this area by 20%,
yes.
which is that's an amazing impact on the literature.
Yes. Yeah, I do know that there are some physicists out there who are trying to apply statistical math, to UAP study as well. Dr. Kevin, what's Kevin's last name, Tim?
Knuth.
Knuth, yes. What a lovely human being he is. He's so great. And he is out there fighting the good fight for all of us. But I don't know that he's had anything published in mainstream science like you just said. So how did you manage?
Well, it wasn't easy, and there's a trick to it to some extent, that there are things we might want to say or interpretations we might want to make of the data, but if you're going to get stuff into a scientific journal, you have to use this language that's very unexciting. You have to be very careful about not overinterpreting the data, ruling out all possible explanations for things, and just being upfront about the likelihood of the various explanations applying. And then you have to get through scientific review. And typically, what happens in a lot of these major journals is if you submit something that's out of the mainstream, they do what's called a desk rejection, which is they don't even review it. The editor looks at it, goes, nope, we're not doing this. And they write back and say, sorry. And I was excited when we got past that point with this journal, Scientific Reports. And then it went out for review, and it was very painful because it literally took about 5 months to get the reviews back. And my normal experience in my day job science is within 2 or 3 weeks, we get reviews back. So it was very prolonged, lots of reminders to the journal to make sure they hadn't forgotten about us. And when we got the comments back, though, I was pleasantly surprised, is one of the 2 reviewers was really pretty critical, but he was fair, and he mentioned some good things that we should do. And we tried to address all their comments, which we were able to do it, send it back, and it was fairly quickly accepted after that, much to our surprise. Beatrice and I both had been pretty skeptical about our chances of getting this in a mainstream journal, but I think the trick was not overdoing it in our discussion of things, and let people draw their own conclusions after we present the findings.
Sure. Was your goal to get it into a mainstream journal?
Absolutely. Because, we're not going to change the field of ufology until we actually turn it into a science where there are people using systematic methods, statistics to try to explore the topic. And you have to publish in these mainstream peer-reviewed journals to be able to sidestep the criticism that you're just making stuff up, or you're wrong about what you're saying. So, I mean, even before we sent it to the journal, I sent this to Mark Roediger at the Center for UFO Studies, who's a statistician. He looked at it and kind of gave me the thumbs up that we'd done the right thing. And there were a couple of other physicists and astronomers who'd looked at it first. But yeah, it's important to get this out there, and I'm hoping that there are other scientists in similar situations that are going to be submitting their work to mainstream journals and start making this a real field.
Yes, absolutely. Well, congratulations. This is very exciting for everyone, for you guys and for the UAP world as well. All those of us that are like you said, we're just dedicating our time, we're volunteering our time to the study of UAPs and the conversation of UAP. And it's nice to have some scientific backup there now. those of you that are listening, I just found out that Steve is actually quite new to the field of UAPs, that you sort of stumbled into this last year. And we're going to dive into that in a second. But we have lots of people that are joining us live right now. I want you to hop on there and comment. Tell us where you're from. Where are you listening from? I would love to know. I'm sure Steve would love to see just how far his research has reached. So if you're joining us live, please tell us where you are listening from. If you have any questions or comments, drop those in the chat. Like we mentioned, our super chats will go directly into this conversation, and make sure questions are in all caps. And before we move on to Steve's background, Tim, do you have any questions for him about his study?
Yeah, Steve, I think one of the important aspects of your paper with Villarroel, Beatriz Villarroel, is that this is all pre-Sputnik, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think this is part of the problem with modern sky watching, which, by the way, I think it's always worth it to get out and look at the sky. I like to look every night when I take the dog on a walk, and my kids like to go with me, and we see things every night. But all I hear now are I'm seeing satellites, which I understand, and LEOs, which I understand a little bit less, and I see all this space clutter in the sky. But one night we saw Falcon 9, which was pretty cool. But this was pre-Sputnik. What is the significance of that, Steve?
Well, the problem with doing anything with the sky nowadays is there's so much noise from space junk, satellites, all those things. And, a part of a rocket that exploded in space would probably look like a transient, or more likely would look like a streak if it's a long exposure. But it's very hard to detect these things now. I think for me, what is outstanding about this, because the sky was clean back then, is that with these findings showing what they did, and it wasn't just nuclear tests with transients, but we also found that the transients were associated with UAP sightings from the ground. So it's kind of like this triangle of nuclear test, transients, and UAP sightings all interrelated. And given that finding of ours, that the biggest association was with transients that occurred one day after a nuclear test, the conclusion when we rule out the alternatives would be that this supports the presence of, I'm sorry, let me back up and make one more quick point. Beatrice, in a separate paper that also just came out, found that if you look at where the transients actually are, if they're in sunlight, you see them, but when you get into the Earth's shadow, many of them disappear. And what that means is these are not plate defects. These are objects in orbit that are reflecting sunlight. Now, that together with our findings suggests that whatever the source of them are, these are artificial reflective objects flat enough to reflect sunlight brightly, that are in likely a geosynchronous orbit, which is about 22,000 miles out at that time prior to any human satellites. And they were close enough to come here in numbers within one day of a nuclear test. Now, where are they before that? I don't know, but I think it raises some very interesting questions.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, you had brought up about the peer review process, which I'm sure was quite harrowing. But, there is quite the stigma. We've noticed this from the very beginning. Even some high-level academics that come on here, they're quite nervous about publicizing, what they're really interested in or what they're doing. And some of them tell us things off the air that they don't even make public at all because they just are afraid of what that would do to their career. I mean, were you ever worried, Steve, about the stigma, or were you nervous? Like, oh man, I'm really gonna get some bad looks when I show back up to work here the next day, or did anything like that cross your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest. I'll be honest with you about how this actually all came to pass, because it's kind of a funny story. So my wife was volunteering at my kids' school, and they do these night classes for the community that are like one-off, several-hour classes on various topics to raise money for scholarships. And I offhandedly joked to the person that was organizing this, and I said, "I'll do one on UFOs if you want." And instead of laughing at me, she said, "That would be awesome, do it." So I was then forced to put together a talk on UFOs, and this was probably 2021 or 22. And I did it, and about 15 people showed up, and it was kind of fun. So I felt better about it after that. Asked me to do it again the next year. I did it again. And then I had started telling some of my trainees, like physicians I work with who were like junior faculty, I'd been telling them about what I was doing. And one of them texted me on a Saturday and said, "A friend of mine is going to this conference in Huntsville called Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. You should check it out." And I live about an hour and a half from Huntsville. I decided to go down there and ended up, being able to have dinner with Ross Coulthart and, have a lot of really interesting conversations. But what happened after that is I started feeling like I really want to do some science in this area. And I started working with Beatriz as well as on another project we'll talk about later, I think. But then I became really worried that if the chairman of my department found out I was doing this, that he might not take it very well. So I set up this mysterious meeting with him and didn't tell him what it was about. And I went in and told him this. And I was shocked because what he said was, "You're using regular scientific methods. I think this is a legitimate scientific thing to study. Go ahead and do it." And I said, "Okay." I said, "But I won't use Vanderbilt's name." And he said, "No, I think it's fine. I mean, this is interesting stuff and you're doing real science. So just use it." And yeah, even today, I had a press inquiry from a major publication about this, and I had to run it by the Vanderbilt press office, and I was kind of expecting bad news, and they quickly wrote back and they said, "Nope, that's fine. This is a really interesting paper. I can't wait to read it." And that was all they said. So I have
That's
been pleasantly
awesome.
surprised how the institution has taken it. And I've been
Yeah.
talking with colleagues more. Some of them have been so interested, they asked me to give my UFO talk to groups of people. And one guy just a couple of days ago said, "Hey, I'll take a sabbatical and work with you free for a year if you do something else like this."
Wow.
So
Hello.
people are interested.
Well,
Absolutely. I
yeah.
do wonder if Avi Loeb has opened the doors for other academics to talk about UAPs, because he is so open about his studies of UAPs, and he works at Harvard, and hopefully he's
I
paved the
think
way for some people.
between him and Gary Nolan, I think it really
Yes,
does
Gary
make it
Nolan.
easy.
Yeah.
And Gary had a very funny thing to say to me when I explained to him my fears about doing UAP research and how Vanderbilt would react. And he said, "You're tenured, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, F Vanderbilt." And that was his only comment.
Well, look, if there is ever a sign of, things changing, we've got Vanderbilt, a national powerhouse in football and pursuing UFO studies. 2025 is just hitting different. There's
Times they
no
are
doubt about it.
changing.
Well, CJ, and Steve, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there was a little bit of, I guess you'd say, controversy or tension on UFO Twitter around this topic today, particularly because, and I want to bring up this question. It's from Ad Astra on X, and he really wanted this passed along to you. The controversy was this thing between ARXIV versus Nature. For example, your and Beatriz's paper ran in Nature, but it was apparently not put on ARXIV, which I think is more like a bulletin board type of situation as opposed to a peer-reviewed type of situation. What is your take on that?
Okay, so this is a fine point that's very important, right? So there are manuscripts that you write and you submit them for peer review. And if they make it successfully through peer review, they're published in the journal, right? And that's what you would call an actual publication. But before you get that decision from the journal saying that it's accepted for publication, it is considered a preprint. And there are now like preprint servers where you can upload unpublished studies that may be under review at a journal but not accepted yet. Archivex is one. There's another one called Research Square. We happen to post ours, our preprint of our transient nuclear paper, to Research Square because Research Square is integrated with the Nature group, which is what the journal we submitted to is part of the Nature group. So we did get it on a preprint server, and the critics who complained about us posting that were correct to some degree, saying it's not published yet, right? And that's true. And maybe our results are wrong or whatever, but now they can't say that because we are actually published in the official journal, and it has been peer reviewed.
So take
that.
That
is a great answer.
Take that, critics.
Take that, bulletin board, non-peer reviewed process websites. That was a really great and thorough answer, Steve. And I think that
I wasn't
answer
even
could have.
sure that question was in English. I'm glad you walked me through that because I was lost.
Yeah, but again, that's one of the problems with social media too. Is like to the general population, those sorts of things, they can get taken to extremes that at some point aren't really anywhere close to the truth, right? Like they're kind of really far out there, and so there's talk about conspiracies and all kinds of stuff, right? Trying to squash the data down and that sort of thing. So I'm really happy that you cleared that up, Steve. Thank you. And CJ, do you think this would be a great time to let some people have a couple of questions here on this paper with Steve and Beatriz? Okay, I'll let you read this one, CJ.
Okay, this is from Interstellar. Hello, Interstellar, and thank you for reposting our feed, by the way. Now that we have the data, peer review, what would be the next step in validating or correlating the data with any other scientific studies?
It's a good question. And assuming this is a problem in UAP science, is there are no agencies that devote money to funding research studies. So it requires people like me or Avi Loeb or whoever devoting their time, often at nights and weekends outside of their regular job, to be able to do the science. But assuming we have money, one thing we would like to do would be, for example, to contact other observatories that had digitized plates from that same era but took pictures of the sky from other angles, like the Vatican Observatory, and I think there's some others that have photographs from that same era, late 40s to the mid 50s, and we'd like to just replicate it. That it would be really good. Now, I don't know if results would be different or not, but it would be really interesting to look at that. And if we did replicate it using a totally separate data set, that would just strengthen the results further. Other than that, I'm kind of racking my brain trying to think of other contemporaneous things that might have happened in the late 40s and 50s that we could try to correlate the transients with. Is there something that we might expect? There might be an association if transients are a UAP. I haven't come up with what that is yet, but I've been thinking about it.
Oh, interesting. Maybe our listeners could come up with some ideas there. And
well,
CJ,
funding.
Funding is definitely needed. Yes. I was going to say just an example. A person wrote us who is a professor somewhere and suggested looking at volcanic eruptions, thinking that maybe some of these could be an effect related to the piezoelectric effect from either earthquakes or volcanoes, and that can come from the ground being stressed, which I started to look into, but it was kind of hard to find definitive dates for a lot of these things. But it's a nice idea.
I know one. I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but it happened not that far from you. The earthquake that created Reelfoot Lake, in Tennessee, made the Mississippi River run backwards. And when you read about some of the things that was witnessed after that, it is just jaw-dropping, the things that happened after that earthquake, which I think is one of the most powerful ever recorded.
Yes, that's right.
And CJ, I bet you thought the same thing.
Sorry, I was going to say one of our commenters, Joshua Schwab Mangold, posted a little emoji of volcanoes right before you said it. I don't know if you put that in your brain.
And dinosaurs.
We asked where everybody was from. He told us planet Earth.
And dinosaurs. Steve mentioned he was sitting at the same table as Ross Coulthard, and I mean, CJ and I have speculated that maybe his giant UFO caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. I mean, I think that it is possible there.
And I still think it's under the Vatican, personally.
Oh yeah, well, Steve, I could guarantee you, CJ and I both thought Vatican Observatory when you talked about other observatories. You don't happen to know a guy? We might know a guy that could help you get their records. You may know him, Tim Taylor. Does that name ring a bell?
Does. I don't know Tim Taylor. We probably could use help. We could probably use help in connecting with the Vatican Observatory because they're not really fond of the UAP topic, I hear.
Yeah, well, here he can pull some major strings. I want to say hi to JP for being here. JP says, hi, folks. Thank Future Fish, I guess, on YouTube. Pam from T or C brings up something which we may get into later. 3I Atlas. I guess we better not get into that just yet, though, CJ.
Were there any more listener questions?
Yeah, we did have one more listener question here.
From Interstellar again. Did you ever feel there was an attempt to classify this information? Do you think this data was already known by intelligence agencies?
And Steve, before you answer that, can I preface this? Because there was a recent, very controversial post by a scientist on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but this is one of the sorts of things that he was very frustrated with, was that they would have to send their data off, and before it came back, like they may or may not get it back depending on national security. So yeah, I just want to preface with that, Steve.
Yeah, the advantage we have is we're not relying on the government to access the data. And I think if we had to go through requesting stuff from the government, that could have been an issue. I went to a workshop that was invited scientists and other people that was sponsored by Arrow a couple of months ago, and got to talk to John Kozlowski. And I presented this transient work there at this workshop, and all the Arrow staff were quite interested in it and asked a number of questions. They didn't seem like they were aware that this was known statistically, though, previously. So if somebody has done this before, I'm not sure that many people know about it.
Have you ever got a sense of unease being involved since I've asked about stigma and being nervous, but have you ever just downright got a sense of unease, Steve, since you've gotten sort of involved with UFOs and UAP?
Not really, although when our review process at the journal was taking so long, I began to be concerned that somebody might be interfering and trying to stall or cut it off before we could get reviews back. But the end result to me indicates that probably wasn't happening. So no, not really.
Well, let's hope it stays that way.
Yeah, I definitely want that.
Well, and this is not your first paper. You had a paper before this one that Tim wanted to dive into. This was the original reason that we were going to have you on the show before the new one came out.
Oh, that's right. And this one was titled Cluster Analysis of Features Associated with Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon Described in 216 Select Reports from 1947 to 2016. Steve, you co-authored this paper with Sarah Little and Robert Powell. And first of all, Steve, can you maybe tell everybody what exactly is a cluster analysis?
Sure. So let me talk a little bit first about the data source. So this was Robert Powell, who's one of the founders of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, had done this work with several of his colleagues where they had gone through several large databases, the Blue Book database, MUFON, GAIPAN, which is the French government database, the old MICAP database, and the Center for UFO Studies database. And they had, this was over 100,000 UAP witness reports, and they had applied these very strict criteria to those data to try to identify cases that because of various characteristics, were likely not to be erroneous identifications of things, and were likely to be reliable reports and truly anomalous phenomena. And out of that 100,000, they winnowed it down to about 301 cases. And then they looked at factors like the shape of the object that was seen, its size, did it hover, did it exert electromagnetic effects like interfering with radios or television, or shutting down power systems, turning off engines, and did it make any noise? And he presented at the SCU meeting in 2024 on this, and was using very simple, just percentages of things to try to make sense of the data. And as I was listening to him talk about this, something clicked in my mind, and I thought, I wonder if we could use statistical pattern recognition, apply it to these witness reports, and maybe identify unique types of UAP that we might not otherwise think of, that are kind of statistically supported. And I had in the past, in the biomedical context, done research studies using a procedure called cluster analysis, which is really just a statistical procedure that analyzes a set of data. You tell it a certain number of features to look at, and it finds groups that share similar features among themselves, but are very distinct from the other clusters. So the example that I have used in a talk before is, if I have a basket that's full of a mix of red apples, green pears, and oranges, and I apply cluster analysis to it, what I would do is I would say, I want you to do a cluster analysis and cluster by color and shape. And I run that cluster analysis. What should happen is it's going to detect the underlying groups in that basket, and it will separate out the red apples from the green pears from the oranges. So if you have a data set like a bunch of UAP witness reports, and it's kind of all a mix of different features and patterns are kind of hard to discern, you run a cluster analysis on that, what it's going to do is detect underlying types of UAP based on the features you tell it to look at. And one possibility when we started that project was that and some people argue this, that witness reports are garbage, right? That this is bad information. People don't really know what they're seeing. They don't report it accurately. So it was certainly possible we might have had a lot of garbage, and the end result would be, a cluster analysis that didn't work. And there's a statistic, kind of arcane, but it's called the average silhouette value. And the criterion of 0.5 is important, because if you're below 0.5, what it means is you basically got random data and there are no clusters. But if you exceed that 0.5 cutoff, which we did, we were actually 0.6, what it means is the data aren't random, and that the clusters you end up with are interpretable and reflect real groups of UAP in this case.
Yeah, you had such a great point there about witnesses, because this is one of the things I think is so great about this paper, is that it validates, this is just me talking and not statistically here, but it validates witness reports in a quantitative way, right? And I think that this is so misunderstood by the general population. I see it all the time on social media. People get really frustrated about the lack of what they would say is evidence. But I think what they don't understand is that qualitative data, eyewitnesses and interviews and that sort of thing, is a form of research and data, right? And can you comment just on the giving quantitative validity to qualitative witnesses?
Yeah, and I would even argue with you that witness reports are qualitative data, right? In a sense, they are, but you can take a paragraph somebody's written that describes a sighting that they had of a UAP, and from that, you can extract quantitatively analyzable data. Like, What was the color? What was the shape? Was it day or night when you saw it? Did it seem to hover? You have all these characteristics that you can turn into quantitative data that you can apply statistics to. And I have to here give, I know people like to give Arrow a lot of grief, but I have to give
We've never
them
done that.
I have to give them credit though, because at least under John Kozlowski, they initiated an effort and sponsored this workshop that was solely intended to look at how do we analyze witness report data. And they were very serious about taking the witness reports as valid things we should be paying attention to. So I have a pet peeve that I will briefly share with you as a scientist is people are so into AI these days that even these scientists, when we talk about how do you analyze witness reports, they're just basically saying, just have them describe what they saw, we'll record it and apply AI to it, and it will magically tell us, what we're interested in. And to a small extent, that's true, but the difficulty is if you don't ask for the information, then it's not there for AI to analyze. So if you're ever going to do science on witness reports, one thing you really have to do is ask everybody the same questions so that you have the same information from every person who's seen it. And one person may say it was a triangle, and this person says it was a disc. And one said it made a lot of noise, and another one said it didn't make any noise. And we need to know that for everybody. And if we do that with enough witness reports, we have a really nice database that we can apply AI to or analyze using regular statistics.
And I've been personally impressed with John Kozlowski, director of Arrow. You brought up John, and he recently made some comments on Star Talk Radio with Neil deGrasse Tyson that really reminded me of one of your clusters that you identified, a very intriguing cluster, which was Triangle UAP. Steve, do you want to tell us a little bit about Triangle UAP as far as what you discovered through cluster analysis?
Yeah, so what we ended up getting was 7 different clusters out of this, and in this table right here, there was one cluster that was cluster 4 that was triangles, chevron shaped, boomerang shaped. It was all objects that kind of had that angular shape to it. And this cluster, when you dug into the details associated with these sightings, really reflected kind of the prototype that's out there in the literature. I don't know if you've ever read Dave Marler's book on triangular UFOs. He's kind of the expert on triangular UFOs.
Right.
But in this study, we came up with a lot of the features that you would think you'd see based on these like reports and books like that, which was most of the sightings were at night. Lights, this one cluster was the one most likely to have distinct lighting on the object, with white and red being the 2 most common colors. And with cluster 4, one of the things that was important about this was they were able to hover and go extremely fast, like accelerate extremely fast. So they had this high dynamic range in their movement. And they did, in many cases, seem to show an interest in the witnesses. They behaved in a way that suggested that they were aware that there were people watching them. And it's an interesting group. And one of the things we found in the analysis is we plotted the dates of all the sightings by cluster. And what was interesting when we looked at this cluster 4 was that you got chevrons and boomerangs for many years from 1949 up through the mid 70s, but there was a change. And around the mid 70s, suddenly you started seeing objects that were described as true triangles, these big black triangles at night. And it's continued since the 1970s. It's intriguing to think about what changed, right? Why did these true black triangles suddenly appear in the mid-70s. One possibility is it is a secret government-developed device that still remains secret for some reason, even 50 years later. That would explain why it suddenly came on, is because that was when it was developed. Now, I have no proof that that's the case. It may or may not be true, but it's kind of an intriguing change in UAPs over time.
And I did want to ask if you had any theories on that, and you kind of said it there. But Steve, let me tell you what I find puzzling about that theory, because it is true. I mean, we could definitely maybe attribute some of these to our tech, but this seems like an oxymoron to me. If we have secret tech, triangular shaped, for example, black triangles, why do we also have government entities like Arrow trying to figure out what these things are if it's our secret tech that we certainly already know about because it's our secret tech? Like, I don't understand, why would we go through the trouble of creating something like Arrow to have them chase something that we already know is ours? And I don't know if CJ's heard this or not. So Steve's triangular cluster here, they came out black or very dark or very black, and often with red or white lights. Let's give a quick listen to what John Kozlowski said on Star Talk Radio here.
That merit further analysis, that are helping us refine our hypotheses. There are a few triangles that have been seen by local law enforcement. Very, very black triangle, triangular prism. So it looks like a pie slice, hovering about the size of a Prius, about 40 to 60 meters away. So as the officer was driving up to investigate underneath a glowing orb, he slammed on his brakes, and this thing the size of a Prius, blacker than black, reared up 45 degrees and then shot up into the sky faster than anything he'd ever seen. And as it was leaving his sight, it shot out red and blue fireworks, flares, so bright it lit up the inside of his vehicle. He didn't see any propulsion, no wind, didn't hear anything over the sound of his own vehicle. In that same region of the country, a couple law enforcement officers had seen glowing orbs a few hundred feet above the ground, a few miles away.
Steve, what's your take on what John Kozlowski had to say there?
Yeah, so one thing I didn't mention before is that cluster 4 triangular cluster, they did not make any sound. So that is totally consistent with what he was just describing. My personal bias is these are not government things, because I agree with you that for a couple of reasons. One is that, inside the government, even among people that are highly cleared to hear classified information, everyone keeps saying these are not ours, right? The other thing is, when has the government ever created something and not used it, right? So if you've developed a technology which presumably would essentially serve as an anti-gravitic technology, if you could do that, which seems to be the case for these triangles, why would you not employ it in wars we've been in, or to threaten other countries that are threatening us? I mean, it would seem like it would be to our advantage to have it be public, and no one has ever said that it's ours. So, I mean, that doesn't make sense either.
Exactly. CJ, do you have any follow-up on this paper, the cluster analysis, or should we get to a couple of hot takes real quick?
I don't, but I have just questions.
Okay.
Maybe not about this paper, but we've leaned very scientific, which I know the purpose of this paper is to apply scientific method to the study of UAP. But I want to go a little bit more, personal here and get down to, you talked about you volunteered to give us a talk on UAPs at your child's fundraiser event, but what sparked your original interest in UAPs? Have you seen one yourself? Have you seen something that you cannot explain?
Nothing major. The only thing I ever saw was in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is the middle of nowhere, very dark skies. I saw this multicolored light that was kind of moving back and forth on the horizon. And as I was becoming fascinated by it, the stupid cat ran out of the house because the door was open, and I had to go run to try to catch this cat. And by the time I got back, it was gone. So I don't know if it was aurora borealis, which you sometimes see up there, or if it was some type of object. That's about the closest I've had to it. But I'm old. I grew up in the 70s. And, I was 10 years old in
I don't think that
1972.
makes you old.
Well, relatively old enough, though, to remember 1973, which was this year with this huge wave of UFOs, the Pascagoula abduction, a
Yes.
lot of UAP stuff in the news. And it was just fascinating to me, in the newspaper, magazines, TV shows, the idea, and I like Star Trek and I like science fiction. So this all mixed up in my head and just made me interested in the possibility that maybe UFOs were beings from elsewhere. I then, though, over time, kind of lost interest in it. I got into being a scientist in graduate school and became highly critical and kind of dismissed it. And it wasn't until a number of years later, actually, my mother gave me a first edition copy of the Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, Ed Ruppelt's book from the 50s. He was the head of Project Blue Book during the only period when they were actually doing UAP investigations. And it was an excellent book. And I came away reading that after reading it thinking, there's a lot of evidence that even the government admits is there. Why are people not studying this? Because this person who directed the Air Force program is saying we don't know what they are. And that kind of was what sparked my interest in it again. And then I periodically read things related to this until the 2017 New York Times article came out. And then I felt better talking about it with other people at that point because, like my wife read that and was like, wow, this really seems like a thing. And, I was able to talk with friends and kind of slowly evolved to where I wanted to actually get actively involved in it.
I wonder why your mom gave you that book. Maybe your mom had some experiences. It's her way of telling you.
I will tell you that my stepfather described living in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, where there was a SAC base, a Strategic Air Command base. And he said he was coming home one evening down a road that dead ended into another road, and there was a field on the other side. And he said as he was driving down this hill, he saw this craft that was cigar shaped with portholes just slowly going across this field, and he was amazed by it. And when he got home, his son came running in who'd been coming from a totally different direction and said, I saw a UFO. So they both saw the same thing. That's a pretty cool sighting. I wish I could have something like that.
Holy moly. That's cluster 3, by the way.
Exactly. That's exactly
I
right.
mean, I'd be willing to bet that of all the people that are tuning in tonight, most of them have something, whether it's a UAP sighting or they have had some kind of ghost experience or something out in the woods that they can't explain, some sort of unexplained phenomena that they have experienced that they can't explain. And the more that we do this show, the more I get approached by people who like to share their stories with me as sort of a safe space, somebody who believes or understands. What's the wildest story that has been shared with you now that you are studying this?
UAP related?
Not necessarily, just something that you thought, okay, I really trust this person, and that is unlike anything I've heard before.
Trying to think if I can talk about this or not.
I mean, this is a safe.
Well, okay.
Space.
I will say this without naming names. So I met with a very well-known person in this field. Had dinner with him, and was told about congressional testimony that was given privately to a few senior people in Congress that was touching on the issue of whether there are non-human intelligences living among us. And that's about as far as I will go. But it was my response was, that sounds like bullshit. And his response was, I'm being honest with you, that's exactly what Congress was told. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So
I mean, there are people that I have
can't say
questioned.
more than that.
What Congress may really be trying to figure out is which one of them are. So, Steve, I got to ask you, based, because of that, have you ever seen one of our favorite movies, They Live?
Oh, I love
Rowdy
that.
Roddy Piper.
They show it on Halloween every year. They do that. Yeah, that's a cool movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've got a little.
I honestly. Clip. Oh yeah. One of our
let's
favorites.
See if I can find our. CJ, go ahead while I find it.
Oh, I was just going to say, Tim had referenced this movie so many times on this show, and my pop culture knowledge is really it's really dismal. I don't watch much. And we exchanged movies. I said that I would watch that movie, and Dr. Charles Liu made me watch something. I can't remember now, but it was awful. Sorry,
Star
Dr.
Wars.
Liu. No.
God help us. She said Star Wars was awful.
No. So anyways, I watched that movie and I thought, okay, this is brilliant.
Dune. That's what he made you watch.
Dune. The
Dune
original.
I wasn't that wild about Dune, but here is our friend, rest in peace, Rowdy Piper from They Live.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
We're all out of bubblegum. So.
Yep, that sums it up.
We're devolving quickly in this show. Oh, okay. Let's get into some listener questions and hot takes before we lose our audience.
Well, we might have hit most of the listener questions already, but if anybody has some more listener or questions for Steve or me or CJ, I suppose, put them in the chat. Let us know. We'll get to them. But I do have a couple of quick hot takes for you, Steve. And first and foremost, I'm going to phrase this very scientifically. This reminds me of when Avi was on with us one time. I love the way CJ started that show because eventually we learned that there's a particular way you need to talk with Avi Loeb. And it's mostly like very precise and scientific. So I'm going to try to phrase this very precise. Steve, what is the percent chance that we will see Vanderbilt football versus Ole Miss football in the SEC championship this season?
I think I would give Vanderbilt's odds of being in that game at about 75% at this point. If they beat Missouri this weekend, they're going to be in pretty good shape. We'll see. And you got to realize for the audience that Vanderbilt is the worst football team in the SEC historically, and they in the last 50 years have had, I think, maybe 4 winning seasons, and they're outstanding this year. So it's very exciting for us.
Yeah, it is.
Hotty toddy, that's all I got to say.
Yeah.
We'll see if Marie L dreams about it. One of our comments is that something that happens to her is her dreams come true. So she can let us know if she dreams about Vanderbilt and Ole Miss.
CJ, you want to take this?
Oh, yes. From Pam Love. Do you think the government knows about everything that was discussed tonight?
Well, I can tell you that Arrow knows because I personally presented both the cluster analysis study and the transient study directly to Arrow. And I know that a number of people that are well known in this area who've been associated with the government are aware of this. I'm not sure, whether actively within intelligence circles this information is well known, or whether it's more, like with the nuclear issue, whether it's more that they're just aware of many stories and reports of this. I'm not sure if they've ever taken the trouble to analyze it statistically.
I think there were a couple of points here. These are not, I guess we can treat these as hot takes that I did want to bring up from the cluster analysis, because I think these have tremendous impact. And first is taken together. This is from your cluster analysis with Powell and Little. Objects that can both silently hover and silently accelerate very rapidly to transonic speeds, which is apparently near the speed of sound. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Steve.
Yes.
Do not fit the profile of any currently known aviation propulsion technology.
Yes, that is an important point, because that's, of course, what critics will say, is that all of these objects are regular aircraft of some type that are simply misperceived as something unusual. One of the things we found that was kind of interesting was, of the 7 clusters, there was only a single cluster that was characterized by all the objects making sound, right? So you'd think, all right, it's making sound. Maybe that's the engine. So if these are prosaic objects, engines all make noise, whether it's a jet, rotor on a helicopter, a propeller, it's going to make a lot of noise. So this noisy cluster turned out to be a very lazy cluster too. They didn't move fast. They didn't accelerate fast. They didn't do any movement that was particularly notable. Which would kind of argue that the noise had nothing to do with propulsion. And all the other 6 clusters were totally silent. And given that they're silent like that, that doesn't fit any known aviation technology. Unless, of course, there is something that's been developed that is still secret.
That they're making Arrow chase their own tails to try to figure out what it is. And then this statement was also in there, Steve, which is along the same lines. The extreme kinematic range, but maybe you could put this in layman's terms, reported in many UAP cases in the total absence of any sound, suggests that these flight characteristics are not likely achieved via traditional aircraft propulsion methods.
So kinematic range is just a fancy way of saying they can both hover, accelerate really fast, and go to high speeds beyond the speed of sound, right? So it's like in our current military inventory, some of our aircraft can do that. And I mean, not helicopters, but like jets, certain jets are able to do this, but they make an awful lot of noise while doing it. So if you take away the noise, we don't really have anything that would make that possible. And what you keep coming back to is you would have to have a propulsion technology that somehow is counteracting gravity to be able to silently hover and accelerate fast. And I don't know if people have ever looked into this, but there's some fascinating work about efforts that were public at the time in the early to mid 1950s, where all these major aviation countries were making companies were making huge efforts to develop anti-gravity propulsion. And it was very public, lots of news about it for a while, and then it went totally silent. Now, was that because the technology failed, or is that because it succeeded and went into the black world and we just never hear about it? Who knows?
And Pam had a good point here. Electric cars don't make noise. I guess
electric cars also don't hover in the air and go beyond the speed of sound very quickly.
My electric car is starting to make all kinds of noise, and it worries me.
A very valid point. And I think that these electric cars not making any noise. This kind of why so many pedestrians are getting hit now.
Yeah, they actually put noise into them now, fake noise, to be able to warn people about it.
I am trying to get a picture to upload. I've got one more hot take for you here. I may not be able to get this picture to upload, but this is a very hot topic right now. When I was in, Pam agreed, by the way, thanks so much for everybody around the world joining us tonight with Dr. Stephen Bruehl from Vanderbilt, who is making major scientific contributions to the field of ufology. But Stephen, CJ, when I was in Truth or Consequences, I was moderating a UFO debate. And when the debate was over, this really nice lady, older lady, she came up to me and had a great chat with me. And then she handed me her business card. And I've got a picture of it here, but I'm not going to be able to pull up on the screen, I don't think. Her business card was simply this. It's got a picture of the earth and sort of like a bright light behind it or on it, and it says 3i Atlas Advanced Team, and that was her business card. There's no, and she had given these to a lot of people apparently that night. There's no contact information at all. There's nothing. There's not a phone number, an email, and frankly, she was so nice. I thought, if this is some sort of apocalyptic comet cult, I may want in. I mean, she was really, really nice and friendly. So, Steve, I mean, maybe you have some information for us, but what's your hot take?
Is there a question in here?
Yeah. What's your? Oh no, Pam, you didn't get one. I really need to find this card. Steve, what's your hot take on 3i Atlas? That's the question.
A lot of the stuff that I've heard about it to me actually sounds like an interstellar comet. Like it's got a tail. Although I have heard from someone, and I have to take their word on this, that some of the behavior of it doesn't really match what you'd expect a comet to do. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I think about that. I did read Avi Loeb's book about Oumuamua, the last interstellar object that came through, which presents a pretty nice analysis of all the reasons why it might have been a solar sail rather than some natural object. So maybe the same is true of 3i Atlas. I don't really know.
I'm certain Avi's studying this one as well.
He is. And if there's anything to it, we will eventually hear about it.
Yes, we will. Absolutely.
And I think I found it. So you got to see this card. There's the name. I think I got it. Oh, come on. Go to my desktop.
Don't let us down with this one here, Tim.
I think
my question is, what is the advanced team doing? Right? What kind of groundwork do they need to lay for the interstellar visitors to come on 3i Atlas?
Right.
Do they need certain food? I mean, what's the issue here?
Right. What would they eat? Yeah.
We actually had that thought experiment with Avi Loeb because, funding and all that is such a issue. Do you think alien civilizations also have the same type of issues with funding and politicians and everything?
That's a good question. Yeah, I would be, I'd feel bad for the aliens if that turned out to be true, because it's a real frustration to have great ideas and know how to do it and not have the money to do it, right?
Yeah.
And there is
take would
the
be that if
business
they
card.
were intelligent enough to get here, they were intelligent enough to get over their political disputes.
Oh, yeah. So, Pam, there it is. There's the lady's business card from Truth or Consequences.
That's great. Yeah. I honestly, I don't imagine we have to go much more than 100 years from now. I think all these issues will be resolved.
I've got the card, and there's nothing on the back. It's just plain white on the back. I mean,
no phone number?
Nothing. That's it. It's a nice card, like heavy gloss stock.
Now we know who's part of this non-human intelligence that's walking among us here on Earth.
Well, maybe Steve's on the advanced team. No, I'm kidding. Steve's.
I would keep that just in case you need that to get into some secret society or something that ends up being really important.
Now we may have breaking news here. I don't know if what I know about this. NASA has deployed planetary defense tools. I don't know. Do you know anything about planetary defense tools in NASA, Steve?
I don't know what that's referring to.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Planetary defense tools, maybe they're referring to the system of telescopes that are set up to constantly monitor for interstellar objects and asteroids that might hit the Earth, so that would give us warning about that. I'm not sure if that's what they're referring to.
This is in the Daily Mail, apparently just a few minutes ago. NASA quietly deploys planetary defense tools after interstellar visitor shows odd light behavior.
Well, that's intriguing. I'll have to read more about this. Maybe this is important.
I think we all will. I think we're all going to have to read more about this.
Yeah, I love how the Daily Mail says the supposed comet dubbed 3i. So now at this point, it's a supposed comet. That's a great way to put it. has just been added to the list of threats tracked by a UN-endorsed group focused on planetary defense against near-Earth objects. The International Asteroid Warning Network works alongside institutions across the world that detect, track, and study near-Earth objects to assess potential impact threats to Earth. So there you have it, folks.
Okay.
Well, I don't know what
the advanced team.
I don't know what we would do about it, because even if we detect it, I don't think we have the rocket technology to be able to go intervene effectively. I think we've tried, but I'm not sure it was terribly successful.
You telling me Armageddon wasn't real?
Well, Avi, did y'all hear the advice Avi gave people in terms of what to do about it?
What did he say?
He actually caused a little bit of controversy with this, even though he was joking. Avi has a good sense of humor. He told everybody, you know what? I think that I would, if you had any vacation time, I would take it before October 29th. I think he said the 29th.
Well, we got 1 week, so we'll find out soon.
Yeah. There we go.
I think it's always good advice to take a vacation, right? Like that's
absolutely, yeah.
I know, yeah. Don't waste your vacation days on the state thinking you're gonna reap some sort of reward for that. I promise you that. You know what, Steve? I gotta tell you this about Avi. One of the greatest things that Avi ever did on this show is one night. This was not his first time on with us either. I'm sure you remember this, CJ. He was on here and he was in like a sweatsuit, like gray sweat top and sweatpants, and we're like, "Oh, cool! We've never seen this side of Avi before. This is gonna be very different. He's gonna be really laid back and chill. This is gonna be fun." And then all of a sudden, he became aghast to discover that we're on video. Like he didn't realize there's gonna be a video. And so he's like, "I'll be right back." And look, it was pure Clark Kent going into a phone booth.
It was maybe 45 seconds.
Yeah, 30 to 45 seconds later, he was back with perfect hair and full 3-piece suit, everything, suit, tie, everything,
Full tweed
perfect.
jacket, yeah.
I met Avi at the Saul Foundation meeting last October, and he was very nattily dressed, had his 3-piece suit on, and it was in the context of this very intriguing conversation with Eric Davis. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that. Maybe Roswell came up. Maybe we can have you back on another time. And I definitely would love to have you back on, Steve, to when this paper gets pushed out a little more on the cluster analysis. And maybe CJ might want to ask you about future projects and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so much fun having you on, and I know you're now in the throes of UAP study. What else are you looking to do in the future?
I'm going to keep working with Beatriz. Not exactly sure where that's going to go, but it will be transient related. And I'm in some discussions with people about doing like traditional scientific studies with experiencers to start looking at that aspect of the phenomenon, which I know gets kind of ridiculed a lot. But I think there actually are some scientific ways of addressing that question to try to figure out what's going on that would be intriguing.
Yeah.
Again, to do those studies requires money, and it depends on whether we're going to be able to get any money to support that.
You heard the man, folks. We need money. We need a private investor who will fund this endeavor.
I'm happy to discuss it with anyone if they have lots of money and want to fund a cool UAP related study. So,
Speaking of discussing things, where can people find you if they wanted to follow your updates or follow more on this story? Is there a website dedicated just to your UAP studies? Social media?
Sadly, I am a Luddite. I don't do any social media. I don't post things.
I get it.
No. I think the best thing you could do is follow Beatriz because she is out there all the time, and anything we do that's interesting, it will be communicated through her. So.
Okay, there you go. Tell Beatriz you want to give her money, everybody, for the next study. And you know what? I think that studying experiencers is huge because you cannot discount the human experience. I mean, what is there if not that?
Yep.
That's just my personal opinion.
I think everybody has kind of dismissed it for the last, 25 years or so. And maybe it's time to revisit it and actually treat it like you'd study any other thing scientifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So any final thoughts for our listeners? Anybody that might be, tuning in about UAPs for the first time ever, or maybe those that are skeptics out there? What are your final thoughts for people to walk away with?
Just that I think things are starting to change. I think that we're starting to get an actual momentum behind doing true UAP science. I think there actually might be some money available to start doing this, even from the government at some point going forward, although that's still kind of really early to be able to tell if that's going to happen. And I don't know. I think that it's going to be an interesting thing to see what happens over the next 10 years or so in this area between all the science and the firsthand witnesses coming forward with recovered materials and that kind of thing to see where all that leads. But I think it's going to be fascinating.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And to all of our listeners who tuned in tonight, thank you. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so because, gosh, we love it when YouTube sends us random things to congratulate us on our viewership. We need more of this, everybody. So thank you for subscribing, liking, sharing. It all makes a huge difference for us. We do, of course, volunteer our time to the study of UAP and having these wonderful discussions with very educated people who are doing the hard work out there. And we can't continue to do this without everybody's support. So thank you. We hope you all will join us again next time. And Steve, we hope to have you back in the future. I have a feeling you're going to keep moving mountains with your research, and we look forward to hearing what you do next. Tim, I send it to you for your final thoughts.
Great. And Pam says, always hit the like button. Thank you, Pam. That's right. Subscribing is the best thing you can do to support us. Find our store, hit the like button. Thanks, Pam. Thanks for joining me from TRC. This show may or may not, speaking of YouTube, have an in with an potential investor, Mr. Beast. So he loves investing in things. And yeah, we have a slight connection with Mr. Beast. Steve,
well, tell him to reach out if he wants to fund some UAP research. He can just email me. You've got my contact info. So.
Let's do it. I'm going to put his people together with Steve's people, and we're going to make that happen. And my closing statement tonight actually is because of Steve. And it's because Steve turned me on to a man by the name of Dave Marler. And Steve, I'm not sure if I actually told you what Dave Marler had to say back to me, but Dave Marler revealed something quite extraordinary, and that is that he and the National UFO Historical Record Center has been collaborating with AARO for the past year, specifically on triangular UAP. And Dave sent us a statement that we could read or release to the public. And I want to close tonight's episode with this statement to everybody from Dave Marler. Over the course of the last year, I have had ongoing dialogue with AARO. Based on the conversations and exchanges with them, I am impressed with their serious interest regarding the historical data that we at the National UFO Historical Record Center have collected. My conversations with AARO have also focused on triangular UAP, given my extensive database and research into this subset of reports over the last 25 years. The characteristics mentioned recently in conversation between Director Kozlowski and Neil deGrasse Tyson echo the reports dating back decades from worldwide sources. The knowledge that AARO has received similar triangular UAP reports in recent years through official channels is quite validating to the research effort. It is my sincere hope that further communication and collaboration between AARO and credible civilian UAP efforts may lead to better insights into the mystery we all hope to resolve. collaboration, not division, is the most productive path for better understanding. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, CJ. Thanks, Steve.
Very nice. Thank you.
That's a wrap.
And cut.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic drew their plans against us.
All of a sudden, a stick out of nowhere landed right in front of us, and there was no tree, nothing overhead. Something threw it at us.
Yeah. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the Alaska.
We do.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor was revealed to be the chief scientist of the UAP task force with the Pentagon.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, will save for closed session.